Inside the grand cathedral, chandeliers glittered and cameras flashed. The wedding of the year was about to begin. A billionaire groom, a dazzling bride, and guests draped in silk filled the aisles. But among them was someone invisible to most, a humble cleaner with worn shoes. She carried not wealth, nor status, but a secret that could turn this perfect day into the city's greatest scandal. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The bells of St. Augustine Cathedral rang out across the city, their echoes mingling with the flash of photographers' cameras. Luxury cars lined the street, spilling out guests in gowns and tuxedos worth more than most people made in a year. It was the wedding everyone had been waiting for. Christopher Hale, one of the city's youngest billionaires, was about to marry Vanessa Blake, the glamorous socialite whose smile had graced every magazine cover. Inside, chandeliers blazed like frozen stars, flowers perfumed the air, and journalists jostled for the best shot. Hidden behind all that glitter was a woman no one noticed, Rosa Delgado, a cleaner in her 50s with worn shoes and quiet eyes. She had been hired for the morning shift, scrubbing marble floors so the rich wouldn't see a single speck of dust. To everyone else she was invisible. But that morning Rosa overheard something, a secret that would make her anything but invisible before the day was over. Rosa moved quietly through the cathedral's side halls, collecting stray ribbons and discarded coffee cups left by the wedding staff. Near the bridal suite, she paused, her hands tightening on the mop handle. Vanessa Blake's sharp voice drifted through the door, clipped and impatient. Rosa knew she shouldn't listen, but the words froze her in place. "Don't worry," Vanessa hissed into her phone. "By tonight his money is as good as mine. Christopher is so blinded by my smile he won't suspect a thing. Just be sure the accounts are ready." Rosa's chest tightened. Her heart raced with each word. Vanessa wasn't talking about love, she was talking about fortune. The bride who looked like a fairy tale queen was planning nothing more than a business transaction. Rosa backed away, pulse pounding. What should she do? She was just a cleaner. No one here would believe her, especially against a woman like Vanessa. Yet the thought of Christopher Hale, a man who had treated her kindly once before when he passed her in the cathedral weeks ago, walking into a life built on deceit gnawed at her conscience. The ceremony hadn't even begun, and already Rosa carried a secret heavy enough to shatter it all. By noon the cathedral was full. Silk gowns shimmered under the stained glass windows, diamonds sparkled on manicured hands, and every seat was taken. The organ swelled as Vanessa Blake began her slow walk down the aisle, her designer gown trailing like a river of light. Guests sighed in admiration. Cameras clicked in a frenzy. At the altar, Christopher Hale stood tall, though his eyes betrayed nerves. To the public he was a billionaire, but to Rosa, watching from the far back pew with her cleaning cart hidden behind a column, he looked simply like a man in love, unaware of the trap closing around him. Rosa's palms grew damp. She replayed the phone call in her mind, Vanessa's cruel words burning in her ears. Should she speak? Who was she to interrupt a wedding of this magnitude? She imagined the gasps, the humiliation, the certainty that people would dismiss her as bitter or jealous. Yet another thought cut deeper: silence would mean condemning Christopher to a marriage without love, built on lies. Rosa's heart pounded in rhythm with the organ. She whispered a prayer for courage, even as doubt clawed at her. Then the priest's voice rose above the music: "If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now, or forever hold your peace." The air froze. Rosa's hands trembled. The moment had come. Silence gripped the cathedral. Dozens of eyes flicked nervously, expecting nothing but the priest's words to continue. But from the back, a chair scraped against stone. Rosa Delgado rose slowly, her plain uniform stark against the sea of designer gowns. Her voice shook, but it carried through the vaulted ceiling. I cannot stay silent." Gasps rippled through the guests. Cameras turned. Vanessa's smile froze mid-pose, confusion flashing in her eyes. Christopher turned too, his brow furrowed at the sight of the woman no one had noticed before. Rosa's hands clutched the handle of her cleaning cart for balance, but her voice grew steadier. I heard the bride this morning. She wasn't speaking of love, only of money. She said once she marries, his fortune will be hers. That he's too blinded to see the truth. Whispers burst like wildfire across the pews. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others leaned closer, hungry for scandal. Vanessa's face twisted from shock to fury. Lies, she snapped, her voice shrill. Who would believe a cleaner over me? Christopher's chest tightened. He searched Vanessa's eyes, looking for reassurance, but what he saw instead was a flash of panic she couldn't hide. The weight of Rosa's words hung in the air like a storm about to break. The cathedral erupted. Guests shifted in their seats, some covering their mouths in shock, others whispering furiously. The photographer's flashes doubled, desperate to capture every second of the unfolding scandal. Vanessa's mask cracked. She stepped forward, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is absurd. She's jealous. She's nothing, a nobody trying to ruin my wedding. She turned toward Christopher, her hands clutching his arm with practiced desperation. Darling, don't listen. Please, you know me. But Christopher didn't answer. He stared at her, his pulse racing. Rosa's trembling words echoed in his mind, colliding with every small unease he had ignored, the way Vanessa dismissed waiters, her irritation whenever he spoke of charity, how she never once asked about his late mother, whose memory meant everything to him. Tell them it's not true, he said softly, his voice almost pleading. For a moment, Vanessa froze. Then, instead of denial, anger flared in her eyes. You dare question me? After everything I've given up for this day? Gasps swept the room. Her slip of temper was like a curtain ripped aside, exposing what Rosa had warned of. Christopher's chest tightened. The woman beside him suddenly looked less like a bride and more like a stranger. And Rosa, still standing alone at the back, waited for the weight of judgment to fall on her shoulders. Vanessa spun toward the guests, her voice rising with fury. Can't you see? She's a cleaner. She scrubs floors. She wants her 15 minutes of attention, that's all. Laughter bubbled nervously from a few guests, but it sounded hollow, forced. Most sat stiffly, eyes darting between the furious bride and the calm, pale figure at the back. Rosa's cheeks burned. Every instinct screamed at her to sit down, to vanish, to let the moment pass. But she lifted her chin, clutching the truth like a shield. I may be a cleaner, she said softly, but even the lowliest of us knows love when we see it, and when we don't. The room fell silent again. Her words hung heavier than marble. Christopher's chest tightened. He remembered the first time he'd met Rosa weeks earlier, how she had greeted him politely when he stopped by the cathedral, how her kindness had been simple, genuine, without calculation. A stark contrast to the woman clutching his arm now, whose nails bit into his sleeve. Vanessa saw his hesitation and snapped, her voice trembling with rage. If you believe her over me, then you're a fool. The insult landed like a slap, not only to Christopher, but to every guest watching. For the first time, Vanessa's polished mask shattered completely. And in that raw silence, Christopher knew what he had to do. Christopher drew in a slow breath, his hand slipping free from Vanessa's grasp. The sudden movement made her stumble, her face twisting in disbelief. Every camera in the cathedral captured the moment as the billionaire groom turned not to his bride, but to the cleaner standing in the back pew. Rosa, he said, his voice steady, echoing in the vaulted space, thank you. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's lips parted in horror. You can't be serious. You're humiliating me in front of everyone. Christopher's gaze hardened, his voice sharper now. No, Vanessa, you humiliated yourself. Rosa may wear worn shoes, but she's given me more truth in a minute than you ever did in all our years together. The words struck like thunder. Some guests applauded softly, others sat frozen, unsure how to react. Rosa's eyes stung with tears she hadn't meant to shed. Christopher turned to the priest. "This ceremony is over. Cancel it." Vanessa let out a scream, ripping off her veil and throwing it onto the floor before storming down the aisle. Photographers chased her, flashes exploding like fireworks as the scandal made its escape into the streets. But inside the cathedral, Christopher stepped down from the altar, his eyes fixed only on Rosa. The guests murmured in disbelief as Christopher walked down the aisle, each step echoing against the marble. For the first time all day, the cameras turned away from Vanessa's chaos and toward the billionaire who had just abandoned her at the altar. But Christopher's eyes weren't on them. They were on Rosa. She stood frozen near her cleaning cart, her hands trembling. This wasn't the kind of attention she had ever wanted. But Christopher stopped in front of her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You saved me from a lifetime of lies. I don't know how to repay you." Rosa shook her head quickly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I just couldn't stay silent." Christopher's jaw tightened, emotion flickering in his eyes. He turned toward the crowd and raised his voice. "Today, I almost made the greatest mistake of my life. And the only person brave enough to stop it was Rosa Delgado, someone most of us never even noticed until now. That's on us. That's on me." Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing, until the cathedral shook with it. Rosa's face burned, but this time it wasn't from shame. For once, she wasn't invisible. Outside, the bells rang again. But this time, they didn't sound like a wedding. They sounded like freedom. By evening, the scandal was everywhere. News anchors replayed the moment Rosa stood up, headlines screamed, "Cleaner stops billionaire wedding," and clips of Vanessa storming from the cathedral flooded social media. Comment sections overflowed, some mocking the fallen bride, but many praising the courage of the woman who dared to speak. Rosa tried to return home quietly, but reporters had already found her modest apartment. Microphones crowded her doorstep. "Did you plan this?" one shouted. "Were you paid?" another accused. Rosa shook her head, her voice firm despite the chaos. "I only told the truth." Christopher, meanwhile, faced his own storm. Business partners called, family members demanded explanations. But through it all, his answer was the same: "I'd rather face a scandal than live a lie." 2 days later, the world shifted again. Standing before cameras, Christopher announced the creation of the Delgado Foundation, a charity dedicated to supporting women like Rosa, those who worked hard but were overlooked by society. "Bravery deserves opportunity," he said. "And truth deserves honor." Somewhere in the back of the crowd, Rosa listened, her eyes wet. She had spoken once, thinking it might ruin her. Instead, her voice had built something lasting. Weeks later, Rosa's life looked nothing like before. She still woke early, still brewed her coffee in the same chipped mug, but when she walked through the city, people recognized her. Neighbors who once overlooked her now stopped to thank her. A local school even invited her to speak about courage. At the cathedral where it all began, Rosa now worked not with a mop, but with a small team funded by the Delgado Foundation, helping women find jobs, housing, and dignity. She often laughed at the irony: her act of honesty had scrubbed more than floors. It had scrubbed away lies. Christopher visited often, not as the billionaire on magazine covers, but as a man free of illusions. He would sit with Rosa in the quiet courtyard and say, "You gave me back my life." She always shook her head. "No, you chose the truth yourself. I just reminded you to look." One crisp September evening, as the city lights flickered on, Rosa paused outside the cathedral. Bells tolled above her, but this time they didn't sound like wealth or scandal. They sounded like hope. Because in a world where lies often shine brighter than truth, one cleaner had proven that a single brave voice could change everything. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.